Now, with the adoption of technology for stocks trading by the Nigerian Exchange Group and the need for greater capital flows for a sustainable economic recovery, the Nigerian Exchange is set to reappraise the strategies for sustaining growth in the post-COVID capital market. Despite the challenges the capital market encountered during the pandemic, the NGX have created an opportunity to drive sustainable wealth creation and economic development through policies that foster innovation and digitalization, addressing severe societal challenges. The development has also made the NGX strategically positioned to invite stakeholders in the capital market to form partnerships that will foster the growth and development of the Nigerian economy. Well, to discuss this and much more as we analyze the performance of the Nigerian Exchange Group in the year 2021 and also activities ahead of the year 2022, ascertaining the future readiness of the capital market in a line of technological advancement, I have joining me virtually the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Exchange Group, Temi Popoola. Good to have you on the show today.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. And that would be Nigerian Exchange Limited is what I'm the CEO. Thank you.
Now, we've had quite a resilience report. The performance of the Nigerian Exchange has been tremendous. Before the shift in the name, we saw a robust move. Now, this, looking at the maiden Nigerian Exchange Limited Capital Market Conference theme, the future ready capital market innovating for Nigeria's sustainable recovery, is also one of the new energies being brought to the fore. What's the event about and who are we expecting at this conference as we also continue to trail the blaze across the African continent?
All right. Thank you very much for that question. And thank you again for having me. This event really, I think we're trying to achieve a few things. But before I discuss that, I think some would argue that the exchange is really the custodian of, the capital markets in Nigeria. So we think about the norms, the traditions that we have adopted as a country around just investing, around capital markets. I think it will all find its way to the exchange. And I think it's a recognition of this responsibility that drives some of this activity that we're about to discuss. So one of the first things that, we think this event will help us to achieve is really to situate the subject of capital markets really where we think it should be. When you think about the collective challenges that face us as a nation, we are convinced that one tool that is least utilized in trying to address this is the capital markets. So the event specifically will be looking to explore, I'd say, about three things. First and foremost, we'll be looking to explore what exactly the capital markets can do for the government. Secondly, we'll explore what the capital markets can do for the private sector. And I think the third lens is really that if there's an alignment and an understanding that the capital markets are useful, what can we do together, particularly through policy, to try to improve the capital markets and to bring sort of a new sense of life to it. And so if you think about it across all of these themes, there'd be very strong representation. So if you think about the sort of policymaker, the regulator standpoint, we're having very strong representation there, very strong representation of the business community, and indeed very strong representation from opinion shapers, thinkers around the capital markets to address this.
And now, talking about a further breakdown of what we would expect, key topics to be addressed during the conference include driving capital market recovery through policy advocacy, driving government's economic growth plans using the capital market, and then the role of the private sector in the growing capital market space. Can you just quickly expatiate and tell the viewers now about the selection of this topic and why this is integral?
Okay, sure. So if you think about just the nation Nigeria, I spoke earlier about the collective challenges that we have. I'll mention two or three of them. One is infrastructure. The other is housing, for example. The third are things around unemployment, SME growth. These, you can argue, are some of the challenges that faces the government today. And one of the things that we're looking to explore again is how the capital markets can help to address this. So this will be under the first plenary session around just capital markets and how the government can use the capital markets. I think if you think about the private sector as well, most corporates are thinking particularly around funding, financing. They would typically go to banks for this. We'll be exploring how the capital markets can help drive this, how the capital markets can help companies act more responsibly, act more sustainably in this environment where we're in. And then the third session, which you spoke to, is just really through policy advocacy, how this can help to revive the markets, how this can help to at least make sure that we have a market that is thriving across all of the asset classes that today are represented, and those asset classes that are not currently represented. Maybe I should say very quickly some of the guests that we're expecting who are confirmed attendees. The Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, will be the keynote speaker. We have confirmed participation and attendance by the Senate President, by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. We have the governors of Edo State, Ekiti State, and Kaduna State also confirmed to attend. The Finance Minister, the chairman of the occasion is Alhaji Abdul Samad Rabiu. We have very strong representation from the regulators, the Securities and Exchange Commission, for example, the Debt Management Office, but of course, a very strong lineup from the business community, from the private sector will be represented. So we think that in all, what we're looking to achieve, as I said, is really to probe a little bit more this underutilized weapon, all right, that we think is at the disposal of everybody to just really help drive and achieve some of the goals that we face collectively.
Okay, now, as part of the calls been brought to the table now, industry players have been calling on the government to securitize some of its corporate assets. Now, you recently announced a partnership with the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. Are we seeing a future listing of some of the government-owned corporations like the NNPC on the exchange anytime soon? The expectations around this?
Yes, indeed. I will address your questions from two, I would say, lenses. One is the lens of corporates and companies that you can argue are ripe for listings, for example. So you speak about the NNPC. This morning in the dailies, there was talk as well about a potential listing of a national carrier. So I think we're already seeing these discussions heading in what is the right direction. Which is, I guess, a realization by the government, by capital market operators that, ways to help drive things like governance, like accountability across many of these companies. Probably you would have the capital markets help you do that naturally. The other way to think through the question you asked is around then other teething problems like infrastructure, where we then have to, I would say, go back to basics there to say, well, what would it take, for example, to fund infrastructure through the capital markets? You would typically require three things. One, of course, is bankable projects. The other, of course, is a mechanism for funding. The third, of course, is things like exits. And the reason why dialogues like this are important is because if you think about these three things, the key responsibilities lie in different parts of the system. So if you think about a bankable project, which speaks to just creating the right environment, creating the right legal framework, these are more government-related responsibilities. If you think about then financing exits, this really lies more on the capital markets. And so a fusion of both are the sorts of things that we're looking to achieve here.
Okay, now, in terms of policies, what policies have you also, the exchange, put in place to encourage participation from individuals? Now, how much of a push do we see in this regard?
Okay, thank you very much. One of the core, I would say, goals that we have, we've pursued this, I think, fair to say actually before the demutualization, the exchange did very, very good work in trying to address this question you raised. But we're giving it even greater emphasis post the demutualization through this year. When we look at the representation across two lenses on our markets. One lens is just the sheer number of investors, retail investors on the exchange today. You would find that it's very, very low. The other lens, of course, is to then ask what the demography of the current investors in the exchange or on the exchange today is. And one of the things that you find is that what you would call the belly of the Nigerian demography, the youth, the younger population, really are not very well represented on the exchange today. So we continue to ask how we can get this improved. And very quickly you get to technology as the means to address this. So through technology, you can improve your last mile distribution. And through technology, you can meet this demography that's usually typically on a device. Without access to that device, you really can't get their attention. So we've gone through a path and currently are going through a very, very radical, call it digital transformation journey. We're looking to apply this both to the primary market, primary issuance part of our business, as well as the secondary market trading portion of our business. What you will find, I think, over the course of the next week, 2 weeks or so, is some result of this around the primary market issuance standpoint. You'll see an increased, like never before, digitalization of that process for primary market issuances, for accessing primary market issuances. And I think that following shortly after that, to call it medium term, you should see a more digitization of the approach and the ability through which we can distribute products, capital market products on the exchange into retail investors. So we think if we can get this done, and then of course on top of that, work on product diversification, make sure that we have attractive products, attractive securities to this retail community, we should be able to address this.
Okay, now, Mr.Temi Popoola, we're wrapping up our conversation, but at this point in time, there's the notion we have some investors sitting on the fence, and there are others who also feel that there's the need for much more incentives and innovations to have a bigger pool of investors come to play. What's the strategy here towards increasing investor participation, especially retail investors in the market as we are looking at the year 2022 and closing the year 2021?
All right, I think one of the things that we find and we can reach a conclusion around is that where there is return, capital will flow to. It's almost like sugar and ants. You don't really need to market sugar to ants, they will follow through. And so for us as the exchange, we really are trying to address these fundamental questions to ask ourselves, well, where is the opportunity for returns if an investor was to come here? And again, what that throws to us and throws up is the need for diversification of our products. It's the need to attract corporates with high growth to our exchange. This will take you very quickly, for example, to technology stocks, technology companies. You see a lot of very fast growth there because when there's growth, you probably will see capital appreciation of the assets, and they should in turn attract investors. So that's one way through which we are thinking through this. The other, of course, is to ask what matters to investors today. Outside of capital appreciation, people are thinking about risk management. People are thinking about sustainability to all of the activity that they do. So across these things as well, we're coming up with products like derivatives, like more sort of ethical instruments. We're going to work within Islamic finance, for example. And we think that together, a combination of these two approaches should help us to drive this retail growth.
Thank you very much for your time on the show today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Mr.Temi Popoola, and we wish the NGX all the very best in the coming days.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.